So everyone, this is John, and how do you pronounce your last name?
Hello. Marin.
Marin. Alrighty. So this is John and Eric and Ricardo, and we're going to talk today about some blockchain gaming stuff. So, okay, what is the name of the game that you're making?
The name of the game is Ancient Flame.
Ancient Flame.
It is a blockchain-based MMORPG fantasy game that doubles as a social platform for fantasy enthusiasts. Super exciting stuff. I grew up, for lack of a better term, a huge nerd. I have three Lord of the Rings tattoos, so like
That's very cool.
I wanted to pay that respect to that, like building that fantasy world for other people who also love that type of like high fantasy, but also to do it from like a place of comedy, like everything like within the, and I'll send you guys over some like beta documentation uh in due time so that you guys can take a look at it. But everything that we do kind of comes from this like grounding in, we want it to not take itself too seriously. We want it to be fun, because that's the biggest problem with blockchain gaming right now, is that it's not fun.
Yeah,
Like it feels like work. And
it
that's
feels like
just a
work.
huge
I've
bummer.
that's like the main complaint that I've heard for sure.
Right. Like when you when you sit down to play a game, like even something like as simplistic as Minecraft, right? It, visually speaking, it's not impressive, and it doesn't have to be, because it's fun and it comes from a place of creativity. It comes from a place that's grounded in having a good time.
Yeah.
And I think that the biggest knock on blockchain gaming right now is that it comes from a place of, oh, I make a couple fractions of a token a minute if I continue to to play this game, and that's why I do it. And I feel like for me, I was looking at it going, that's a shame that that these games have kind of diverged from what the point of playing a game is. And so
Yeah,
we
it's like a job
decided,
now.
yeah, we just you may as well not even call it like play to earn. You may as well call it work to earn, because it's practically just a low paying job. Uh,
Yeah, and it
but
has
yeah,
replaced some low-paying jobs in some countries. Actually, I've seen that
no,
happen.
honestly, that's a real thing. And you know what? You love to see that. Like
In
it's
a way,
building
yeah. I
its
mean, like,
own
if I could
it's
take the
building its own
opportunities that are there.
economy in a sense. And I think that was something that drove me as well, is that concept of building, in game, this like social and fiscal economy within that world. I think is a really fascinating concept that will, of course, will continue to grow. So I'm here for that. Basically, we wanted to build a game that was fun first, and everything with the blockchain and the DAO and like in-game currency and things like that were to be secondary. And I think that that's how you become successful in a field like that, is just take everything that it is right now and just try and flip it on its side. Because isn't if that's not what blockchain technology is for, I don't know what it's for.
Yeah. So,
You
are you
know?
doing any of the coding yourself?
Oh no, no.
Okay.
I don't come from a coding background.
Okay.
I come from actually a tokenomics consultation background.
Okay.
Because here's my thing. I'm the type of person that, like, if I lack a skill set, I surround myself with people that have that skill set. I think that's the most successful. It's the easiest way to be successful. Is I don't come. I'm not like, if you were looking to code your website, like you wouldn't call me.
Right.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? Like I don't have that skill set, and that's fine. Like that just means that I need to be like particularly diligent about the people that I surround myself with when it comes to that type of stuff, because I'm one of those people that, like, if you're the smartest person in a room, then you're not in the right room. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's doubly so when it comes to like concepts with which I'm like familiar but not proficient.
So how are you finding developers for the project then?
I mean, just like anything, it's going to be a process of like searching through like non-traditional means, because when you work in a space like this, the whole thing's non-traditional, like,
Mhm.
and there's tons of places these days where you can run into folks. Like I met my COO on Reddit,
Huh.
like talking about the project initially, because basically the concept of Ancient Flame was something that like me and a buddy were talking about, like uh, we're talking about at work essentially. And I basically, the original concept was what would happen if you took Dungeons and Dragons essentially and turned it into an NFT based blockchain game.
Hmm.
And then that kind of expanded and expanded and expanded to, where we are now, which, mind you, is still very early in the process. Like, I don't have a team of developers right now, but, you know, at the end of the day, it'll be a process, and finding the right people so important that believe in that mission that you're kind of putting forward.
Yeah.
So it's all very exciting.
Well, I was gonna ask one more thing. I feel like Eric has some stuff to ask for sure, but like,
Yeah,
I
totally.
like one thing that's been on my mind for a couple of minutes is like, would you be able to describe some of the game to us, or is that under NDA, or is there something like that going
Yeah,
on?
yeah, no, I can for sure. I can speak in like quasi comparison, and I think that may uh, suffice.
Okay.
So essentially, we're drawing like a lot of inspiration from like Borderlands, for example, was a really great. It's a great example of that concept of, it's very tongue in cheek, right? And I don't know if that's something that you've played or not, but
I've
very
tried
tongue in
it before in the
cheek,
past. Yeah,
very like grounded in humor. And that was something that we really like kind of wanted to draw inspiration from, uh,
I like that.
because at the end of the day, like, Borderlands is exactly that way. It is exactly what it is at face value. It's fun, it's engaging, and it's funny. And I think that that's something that we would be very pleased to replicate.
Cool.
Okay. So is it okay? Sorry, I was gonna ask more, but here, go ahead. Go ahead, Eric. I'll ask later.
I actually like Ricardo's question. So I did have a few quick questions about like the
Yeah.
team and like I guess in the future. So like you said you have like kind of a small team for right now. Are they like anonymous? Are they doxed like
No,
you
no,
are?
no. So Rudy Gomez is my COO. Really smart guy, incredibly helpful. A huge shout out to him. Always available when I'm have to call him and pester him about small things at any time of day. He's Texas based, actually.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, he's in Austin.
I'm over in Houston.
And it's basically myself, Rudy, um, my art director, who is my younger brother. His name's Josh, very talented artist. And we have a couple of writers that are working on lore right now. As far as like when you're building fantasy, like there has to be this like deeply entrenched lore involved, when
Oh
you're
yeah.
really building a world. And
Yeah.
that's something that we're taking very seriously, because it's what makes that immersive, like it's what brings you in. And so we're very
It's what
like,
gives the character designs logic behind their designs too.
exactly, it gives them their humanity too. It
Yeah.
gives them something that they're fighting for. It gives them something that they're looking towards, like it makes them human, and that's what makes us connect to those characters. Uh,
Nice.
but yeah, that's is essentially speaking, outside of like our CMO, that's it. Right
Gotcha.
now, as we're like continuing to grow, like I said, we're in a stage that's pretty preliminary. And as we continue to grow and bring in money, then we'll be able to expand that team out into a nice small little studio here.
Cool.
Totally.
And then
Do you have something else, Eric? Because I can just pop off these questions if you unless you want to just go by a list or something. Because it's like this is really interesting stuff. Because what made you? Because I was thinking, what made you decide to go with Polygon? Was it because they reached out, or was it because they were looking at?
If I remember correctly, I had reached out to them
Okay.
because I had been a Matic investor,
Okay.
I guess now Polygon investor, and what I was looking for was I was looking for a place where, because like I said, a lot of the equipment, a lot of the weapons, the armor, the spells, what have you, are all of course, theoretically speaking, be peer-to-peer tradable, right?
Even the
And so
spells, that's pretty interesting.
isn't
I
that,
like
yeah?
that.
We're considering a like 1,000 NFT drop of like unique weapons, armor, spells that won't be replicable. So
Oh, wow.
to a certain degree, some of these spells that will like potentially be running around, you won't see anywhere. Like
Very
you won't
interesting.
see anywhere else. And so for me, the concept of gaming and NFTs, it's a very like a symbiotic relationship. I was surprised that it hasn't continued to like grow at this exponential rate,
With the
because it's a
gaming
match
thing.
made in heaven when you think about it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I think a
especially
lot of it is the gaming companies don't want to be giving away their profits.
right,
They haven't
exactly.
found a way for them to monetize it, I think is the biggest
Exactly.
deal.
Yes, yes, yes. You'll see a
And they
lot of
haven't just
AAA
I feel like they
studios.
haven't been putting a lot of research into it in general because they have other things to do, but
Well, and I mean, you know how it goes, man. Like with traditional
big companies,
systems,
yeah.
and that's true in finance. It's true in banking. You're gonna fight the progress until you figure out how to monetize it. This is
Yeah.
America, like that's what we do. Um,
I was gonna wonder, so you said you had a background in tokenomics in general. So like
right.
I was gonna ask about Luna. Did you see that
Oh
Luna thing
yeah.
collapsing beforehand? Like were you predicting
So
that if you
I've never invested in Luna, and
right.
um, there was a reason for that. I found it like just like a shade too shady for me, even for crypto. And
Yeah.
uh, you know, this isn't Do Kwon's first failed project,
Right. But was it
like
the
so.
tokenomics itself or something else about it that bothered you?
No, I looking at it, I wasn't certain how the like substantial like gains that it was making were sustainable, and I
Okay.
wondered whether or not they were organic.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Um, which is something like for me, like as because I'd been invested in the space since like probably like the middle of 2016. Um, like a lot of people, that doesn't mean that I made money. It just means that I was there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I totally
Uh,
understand.
but my first question that I ask myself is, I look at the team and I say, if I handed that person my wallet, could I trust them with it? And that's for me, that's something that keeps me from a lot of projects, because if I uh like Ricardo, if I was going to hand you my wallet, I would trust you with it, right?
I mean,
We've
that's kind of
chatted.
you, but you don't know me
You
that well
seem like
yet.
you seem like a reasonable guy. I don't think you would steal my identification or anything. Uh, if that's not the case, then I just won't buy that. I won't invest in that product, because
Totally.
at the end of the day, your product is only as good as the team surrounding it.
Yeah.
And the team is a huge deal for me always when it comes to investing in a project. And with Terra Luna, there was something off about it, and of course it's easy to say in hindsight.
Yeah.
And
I totally understand that for sure.
tons of folks that lost a substantial amount of money, and pardon my language, that's a damn shame.
Really, yeah.
Because
It's tragic.
it's one of those things that like it's a barrier for entering the space, right? People from the outside, they look at it and they go, this is a mess. Like things are collapsing left and right. You know, billion-dollar market caps dissolved overnight. Like they look at it, and some people like are a little bit intimidated by that, which is okay. Like it's just another barrier of entry. In the same way that like ease of access is a barrier of entry, like for DeFi, for example. Like if you show your grandma DeFi, are they going to be able to understand it? I think
they probably
that's
can't
really,
even use a centralized exchange. You know what I mean?
right, exactly. And you see, and people wonder why some of these older folks are very hesitant about it, because it feels to them it looks like Skynet, and like there's going to be like Terminators coming out of their computer or something.
Yeah. Well, that's actually one of the main arguments I hear from people who aren't really into the crypto space very much, is like the ease of use is not there yet.
Right.
Considering all the amount of need that you have to keep private keys safe and stuff like that. And just like the infrastructure behind the background, like it's not built for the masses yet. And
right.
I think that's also going to be a barrier to the gaming space. Is there anything that you can do on your end to kind of mitigate that?
I think that the most important thing, honestly, is just education, man. Like 9 times out of 10, honestly, 99 times out of 100, when I have conversations about what I do, when I have conversations about blockchain, the first question is always the same. It's what's blockchain? And the like 1 time out of 100 that you have a conversation where somebody just like they're like in the know, so to speak, it's really nice, because then it's not like you naturally just kind of have that conversation, right? Whereas like with most folks, they don't have a like grounding or a concept of what blockchain even is, let alone the applications within their world. So for me,
in all the development that's been going on lately on top of blockchain that allows you to do smart contracts to the point where you can make games on top of it. Like I remember, like they're probably still thinking back in the day where it's like they were thinking like the blockchain is a decentralized ledger like Bitcoin, and then like they probably, I don't even know if they remember that, but like that's probably the extent of what most people imagine. And then they're telling you like, yeah, I can run games on it, and I don't know,
right?
Like it's kind of just complicated sounding, but
yeah,
it's also
So-
complicated looking on the screen by the time you actually get it, because then it's like you have to set up like a special wallet, and then you have to do all these things for it. And plus, if you're
Right.
using Polygon, gosh, I haven't used Polygon in a while. Do you have to deposit ETH first, or how does that work for Polygon? Do you just buy the Polygon token? I used it once on OpenSea, but I forgot, honestly.
I haven't used it like to transact.
Okay.
But yeah, to my understanding, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that it runs on it runs on Ethereum as like a medium.
Okay. So for the
Yeah.
game then, would you have to buy any Matic, or would you have to buy Ethereum to power the wallet and gas fees, or how do you power the transactions?
As far as gas goes, I would say, yeah, I would say that like until there's a like workaround for that gas is going to have to happen in like the quote unquote traditional sense. And the reason that we chose Polygon was because I'm operating under the assumption that there's going to be a lot of like peer-to-peer trading happening.
Right.
And I didn't want it to cost an arm and a leg for people to do that, and so layer 2 was a layer 2 solution to Ethereum was the obvious choice for us, just in terms of like making sure that the game remains playable, because that's something that would be that's another huge barrier of entry in blockchain gaming, the exorbitant price. Like, because these things, they blow up, and then all of a sudden you're spending 6 Ethereum on a little green dragon that you birthed out of some eggs on some like.
Well, I noticed that
NFT
about like there was a
game.
game, I think Axie Infinity at one point. There was like to start the game, you had to spend over $600 because it was like you needed 3
Yeah.
Axies that were minimum $200 a piece.
Can you
So-
imagine?
So
Like
okay, yeah. So you're trying to like you're trying to keep the barrier down in general, where there aren't these like requirements. Of, like,
I'm trying to make a game that people can actually like, they can play without dipping into their savings, because
Right.
somewhat 40 some odd % of folks live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah. Most
You
people
know,
don't have
like
more than $400 or something in their bank account, kind of thing. So like,
exactly.
and asking them to
Like
spend some hundreds on a game is just
like
not
shoot,
feasible
like I
generally.
barely have more than $400 in my own bank account, you know, like uh but yeah, you know, it's one of those projects for us where we're looking to take down those barriers of entry. It's the reason that there's not going to be a subscription for it. Like we're making it free to play, and the reason for that is because we want people to actually play the game.
Right.
Imagine that.
Well, Eric, it looked like you were trying to have a question over there. Did you want to say anything?
Um, so yeah, as far as I know, like I think the gas token is Matic on the Matic network because I've done a few transactions that way.
Oh, well, that's good
He
to
is
know.
right. It is massively cheaper and easier to use Matic than Ethereum. Oh my God, right? I've spent 100 this year. I've probably spent thousands of dollars just in gas fees alone. Like it's
Oh yeah.
ridiculous. So yeah, going layer two was an absolute must. So that was the way to go. And all my experiences on Matic have been really quick and easy. So like just little
Yeah.
things like when you sign transactions, like if you have a game plan and you're like, oh, I forgot to do this, it doesn't mean you have to undo like $30 worth of stuff to go back and start that process all over again. Because guess what? We're back at unusable again.
Right, because it's layer two, man.
Yep, exactly. And then what else was I gonna say? Um and the main thing was the gas. By the way, Ancient Flame sounds awesome. I forgot to tell you that.
I do like
I
that name.
appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
And even
Um
the symbol, like I saw like a concept art for it. It's gonna be like pixelated, kind of pixel art kind of thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like that. It looks
Yeah,
good.
no, that's my younger brother who's also my tattoo artist. Um, that's
He's doing
his
all the
work.
art for it.
He's a really great digital artist. And
Very
so
cool.
naturally I said that, look, man, like this is what I'm working on. And so, okay, this is how the conversation went. I called him and I said, hey, man, like I'm working on something really big. Um, it's something that would really be up your alley. What do you think? I told him the concept and he said, I hate it. And I said, well, I was like, why? What do you mean? Like, what do you mean you hate it? And he goes, I hate it. I don't think it would ever work. And I said, okay, fine. Like then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do it. And so I must have explained it really poorly because he had the like complete opposite understanding of what I told him. I must have
Hmm.
explained it really poorly because when I came back to him and I said, I gave him the like beta documentation. I said, look, this is what it is. He said, this is what you were talking about? Like, I thought you were building like a side scrolling dungeon crawler. And I said, I don't know like how you could have gotten that out of that, but hey. And so then he jumped right on board and it was a natural fit because he's a huge fantasy fan. He's a great artist. And so of course I brought him on board right away. And one of the first things he sent to me after I had told him like, hey, let's do it, let's go, was that pixelated little like fire thing. And I was like, wow, that's great. Like I love that. Let's run with it. And it's been the logo for the game ever since.
Totally.
awesome.
So that kind of reminds me of, because it's called Ancient Flame. So I'm guessing that's part of the lore. But I was
Yes.
wondering, so are there classes like Ranger and Mage and like
Yes.
Melee and okay.
Yeah. So the concept essentially is that we're bringing the player to a world in which magic was recently discovered.
Okay.
And there's some like factional play almost of like pro magic and anti magic type
That's cool. That's
situation.
cool.
And so you'll hear some like NPCs refer to magic users a certain way versus non-magic users. And it almost also has this like, because we're coming from a place of like early magic, we wanted it almost to have like a steampunk type of feel
Okay.
where like you see these like buildings that are recently like imbued with magic that do certain things that you wouldn't see like in a fully developed magical world, but you'll see here. And I think that that concept of like really early magical discovery and like this essential like gold rush to who's going to use it, what are you going to use it for, is like really interesting. So that's kind of where we're coming from as far as like the use of magic in the game.
That's actually a pretty unique take
Yeah.
on it. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that personally.
Yeah, it's gonna be super. It's gonna be super fun. It's gonna be super funny, and really excited to see that come to fruition. I'm, and you'll hear me talk about the funniness of it a lot, and I keep
It
coming
makes
back to
sense.
it
Like I could
because
see where the
it's really
funniness fits.
important. Yeah, it's really important that the game doesn't take itself too seriously, because I don't want the players to take it too seriously either. You just jump in, you have fun, you do some magic,
Yeah.
you sell some giant speed out of your storefront property, whatever. The concept of digital property is something that we're very like enamored with, or I should say I'm very enamored with. But yeah, the way that we want it to work is essentially there will be properties that are either for sale or for rent, right? And like, let's say, Ricardo, for example, let's say that you're a ranger, right? And you go out and you go hunting trolls, and you say, you know what, I feel like there's a really good market for troll snot as like a potion ingredient, right? And so you open up a storefront and you say, I sell this. And if people buy it, then there you go. You sell troll snot or whatever the thing happens to be. And that gives people almost a money earning mechanic like within the game. So I'm very enamored with the concept of building this like fiscal economy and the social economy in the game that's self-regulating.
Right.
Nice.
So
Go ahead.
one thing about this I actually do want to mention really quickly is like, so I'm guessing you've played MMORPGs before, right?
Yes.
And I'm guessing you've noticed that probably sometimes 70% of the players online are bots, right?
Yeah.
And that can make
Yeah.
a huge dent in the economy. What it can do is like it can
Right.
make either certain things really cheap or certain things really expensive, or it can just totally distort the kind of like, are you considering that? Or like, are you saying that like, because what I was always thinking personally is like, if I was going to develop a game like that, then like I would just assume that that would happen and that would be the case because you can't
Right.
like they try so much stuff to try to prevent it. So what I would try
Yeah.
to do is like
I think
build
that
that
there's
in.
some,
But what
yeah,
are you guys doing for that?
I think that that's definitely a reality that we're going to have to square with. As far as like prevention goes, um, I'm toying with I'm kind of like toying with the system to see how we can't like if we can't limit the potential of bots, because I think that that will be a reality in any online game,
Yeah.
and like
I
how to
think
mitigate
honestly,
that
man,
moving forward.
well, hear my idea out, right? If
Please,
you're gonna
by all
play a
means.
game and like, what if the bots were actually just a normal part of the game? Because the thing is, it's like I don't think there's ever really a way to get rid of them. So maybe
Right.
the economics and the tokenomics themselves of the game can be made in a way such that the bots are doing all the like repetitive tasks, and maybe it actually would be better for you to go right. It's kind of like writing a trading algorithm instead of going trading yourself,
Right.
right?
Right. I
So, but
mean,
the thing
yeah,
is, it would
that
have to be built in a way where like maybe the really like repetitive tasks really don't give you that much out of it, so that the bots really don't have that much of an advantage because you wouldn't want to do it yourself anyways. But if there's something that's more
right.
complex, then you actually get paid or something more valuable that like bot probably couldn't be able to do. And if they could, then like honestly pay them the money because they probably
Right.
spent like years of experience to be able to build that bot in the first place.
Honestly, we appreciate innovation for sure. But yeah, I there's a handful of mechanics that we're kind of mulling over in order to make money in game. Some of
Right.
it is like through like selling product, um, quest lines, obviously, like going on quests and defeating enemies, of course. Um,
Would that
I'm
new
sure
money
that
come
there'll
in
be,
as inflation?
say it again.
So would that new money come in as inflation? Like if you get like 2 gold pieces from the ground or something, is that like technically like comparable to like a crypto that like that comes into
So
existence as
here's what my game plan is as far as like, and mind you, this is purely theory right now,
totally,
but
totally.
um so the DAO token will be used as a means to essentially control what things are going to be either changed or adjusted or whatnot in game, and there will be a separate in-game currency which supply will be infinite because
Okay.
it's an in-game currency, right? It's not meant to make you a millionaire overnight. Its job is for you to use it in game.
Okay.
So the way that I've kind of figured is that we would separate it out. The DAO token and the in-game currency would be two separate entities, so
Totally.
that we can build something that will have like that will inflate naturally, and much like the U.S. dollar.
Yeah. Well,
And
I've been, it's funny, like I randomly, so I have accounts in these MMORPG type style games, but like I haven't played them for years, but they still like my account still exists. So like once every couple of
right,
months, I'll just like log in and see what's up in the game and then remind myself that like I don't find it fun anymore. But like I still like I've put a couple of years into those games back in the day. So like it's
yeah.
cool to see the characters and stuff. And but yeah, sometimes I
So,
realize that there's a lot of development to be done for the actual like fun part of the game.
oh yeah.
Because I get kind of lost. But yeah, here, go ahead, man. Eric?
So, real quick question. So, like, when you're figuring out, like, okay, this is how the in-game currencies are going to work. I noticed during the on the white paper that like it looks like you have three classes of like voting to determine what
Yes.
happens, like governance, basically.
Right.
So like there's the constitutional, which is like I think it's like 70% is needed or something like that. And then there's cosmetic and there's structural. Who
Uh-huh.
determines like what level of vote is needed for an issue?
So the way that I see it essentially is that things will kind of be like funneled into their category. So like for example, if you wanted to if you wanted to add like a character type, like let's say you wanted to add a like a necromancer type of character, and you said, hey, like this is what I think would be cool, blah 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 blah. Like this is my idea, and people vote on that to the point where it becomes an actual a governance proposal. Then that would obviously fall under a cosmetic change, as it would be predominantly cosmetic.
To add a
Whereas
whole new
like
class is cosmetic, really?
I mean it's cosmetic-ish in that like
As opposed
in
to like what else would it be
as
classified under?
opposed to like a
Cosmetic
constitutional
or
change to the way
structural
that the DAO
constitution?
operates.
Okay.
You know what I
Okay.
mean? So like it doesn't change the way that players interact with the DAO token and the DAO token interacts with them.
Okay.
Okay.
And to a certain degree, that would be also structural in that it does need to change the structure of the game to a certain degree in order to make that happen.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a great question, honestly, because it's you have to figure out where things fall and how much of a percentage will be, indicative of that change.
Cool.
So there would definitely have to be some implementations in place in order to ensure that things aren't voted on incorrectly, because that could be obviously that would be a potential problem, right? Like,
Yeah, I saw one of them like you needed the founding team to agree with you too. I guess that's the
that's
constitutional
something
change.
that I'm mulling over.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing is that like, and this is the thing that I'm like pushing with our team too, is that when you're talking about a DAO integrated project, there's a let go of control there,
Yep.
right? And that can be scary, especially when it's your kid, like, and it's something that you've built and it's something that you care about. But at the end of the day, that's decentralization, man. And that's what I have to keep telling them is that like that was kind of a throw in because we were like, well, like we don't want for, like bad actors or whatever to potentially like
Yeah, that's what I was
trade or
going to
something
ask.
like that.
Yeah, so like, how would you keep like a whale or somebody that comes in with like just buys up a whole bunch of in-game currency? Because there's people like what's it called, pay to win, basically. They'll
Right.
come in, they'll buy everything in sight just to win, and then like all of a sudden they got a ton of hours, they have tons of game time in, and then they're deciding decisions, right? So,
Right. So, I mean, there's a couple ways I feel like we can go about it, and we're mulling over a couple different options. One thing that was brought to my attention, which the concept is really interesting, is having certain votes weighted based on hours played, so
Huh.
that the people that are that theoretically carry the most weight are the people that have dedicated the most time to actually playing the game,
yeah,
versus the antithesis of that, which is somebody that just buys up a bunch of tokens because they want to buy up a bunch of tokens and then they can just do whatever it is that they feel like. I want to do our best to stay true to the folks that are actually like, putting in the time, that actually enjoy the game, because those are the people that you really want to hear from, like
gotcha.
you. Yeah, exactly.
People doing the grind, basically, like that.
Right, exactly. The people doing the dungeon crawling and all of the dirty work that makes the
Mhm.
game run.
Gotcha. So, like, if it's a DAO, my other question is like, I saw the breakdown of assets you wanted in the DAO. So it was like
Uh-huh.
20% Bitcoin. There's 30% USD. What was it? 30% ETH or something like that, and 50% like USDC.
A
Um,
combination of USDC and DAI, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Um, in order to like to get more revenue for like your DAO, like would y'all like LP those somewhere, or would you put them in like
I've
would
considered that as an option. And I'll still consider it as an option. It's just, keep in mind, like, and you've gotten into DeFi, the rules. The
Mhm.
more you stretch yourself thin, so to speak, the more risk that you're taking on to do that. And so for me, obviously, like a traditional company like wouldn't even consider something like that. They'd be like, "Are you crazy?" Like, but I would be willing to consider something like that. I wouldn't commit to that right now, only because like I um I feel like having the combination of Ethereum and Bitcoin within that structure, the reason that I put it in was so that there would be growth over time,
Yeah, then the
as
stable
they're
coins will
both
cover you on
on
the
their way to
downside.
becoming deflationary assets, essentially, or a max cap asset.
Yep.
Uh, so that was the reason that I put those in to such a degree, was so that we would see that growth. In
Okay.
order to LP it on top of that, I'm not sure whether or not that's something that I would consider. That's not true. I would consider it. But for now, I would say probably not, with a
Okay.
potential maybe in the future, depending on because as the DeFi space grows, the volatility of that and the risk of that will also decline. So that's something also to keep in mind as well, is that, we're in such an early stage of decentralized finance that you or I couldn't tell you, and you couldn't tell me where we'll be 10 years from now.
Yeah.
You know what I
So
mean? Like,
my other question would be like, how does the DAO generate revenue for itself to like keep surviving into the future, right? So like we're entering a bear market now, or we're not
right.
entering, I think we're in a bear market now, right? So
Safe
like
to say.
how does that affect your plans to like create runway so that you and your team can like be paid to do the thing that you like to do?
So let me preface it by saying, like, a bear market, I'm here for it right now, only because like it allows for you to work quietly, right?
Agreed.
And that was something that I've been telling my team for 6, 7 months. Like, look, this is what we're heading towards. It's going to feel a little weird, but trust me, this is where we want to be at right now.
This is the time to build, basically, because you're
Yeah,
not gonna have people
exactly.
hounding
Just
you for like
put your
results.
nose to the grindstone and get to work. And then by the time the next bull runs around, then we'll get things sorted then. I Some of these prices are very tempting, $10 polka dot. I'm here for that. That's cheap as hell. A lot of these projects are down 60, 70%, 80%, and it's not done going down yet, obviously. Like
Correct.
it's not, don't stick your hand out to catch the knife yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not a good call. But yeah, I think a lot of folks will look at a bear market and they'll be like, ah, man, that's a bummer. But like I'm in a position where like I see that happening and I go, okay, great, let's go. Like let's get to work. I'm here for that.
Awesome attitude, man. So yeah. So this is the time to build in your eyes. And then
Absolutely, absolutely.
as far as the revenue generation goes, you're not so much worried about that for right now. Y'all are just going to build and just see what happens
Right.
from there. Like wait for the
Exactly.
prices.
Yeah. Like I mean, obviously, like we're not profitable, at this stage, and that's fine. I'm happy with where we're at. Considering, the size of our team and considering everything that's gone down over the last like 3 or 4 months, I'm happy with that. My younger brother's apartment had burned down
Goodness,
about
man.
probably about a month and a half ago,
Oh
and
man, I'm sorry.
yeah, no, it's one of those things that like I was just glad that everybody was okay.
Mhm.
Like he had hit me up after, obviously after like some processing, because that's as would happen if a situation like that occurred. And one of the first things that he said to me was, like we like his computer got totally fried and everything on that hard drive that we had been working on was totally gone. And
Oh,
Oh man.
and he was like,
so dude,
man,
I'm so
like,
sorry.
yeah, it's a setback. And what I told him was like, of course, like it was the last thing on my mind at the time. Like,
Yeah.
like as long as my younger brother and his fiance were okay, like that's really all I was worried about. I was like, we can worry about that later, man. I'm not tripping on that.
Yeah, people first, things second. Yeah.
Absolutely. The work can be redone and that's totally fine. What I told
Mhm.
them, I sat down with Rudy and I sat down with my brother and virtually, of course, it's
Mhm.
2022.
Right.
And I basically said, look, man, like this is a setback, but it's not the last setback we're going to run into.
Yeah,
Like
good
this
point.
isn't the only time that we're going to go, that there's going to be adversity involved. It's not going to be the only time pressure's involved. It's not going to be the only time that we're in a spot where we're like, damn, we're in a tight spot. Uh, but
And
as long
yeah.
as we can work through that and, support each other in that, then we'll be totally fine. It's just a matter of rebuilding, retooling, and hitting the ground running harder than you were running before.
Awesome.
Yeah. In
And that's
reality,
all you can
sometimes
do.
I've noticed that. It's like if you something gets deleted and you're like, fine, I have to redo it. Sometimes you redo it better anyways.
Right.
That's
There's a
what
new
I've noticed.
perspective in that too, like of when you've been looking at the same thing for like months at a time, you kind of get that tunnel vision of I need
Yeah.
somebody else to take a look at this. And sometimes that somebody else is you after you've accidentally, deleted something or you've otherwise lost some work, then it gives you a fresh perspective on what it can be now that you have to rebuild it.
Or an opportunity to like redo some mistakes that maybe you were kind of like gonna ignore or something. I don't know. I've
Right.
done
Or,
stuff like that.
to change some questionable verbiage in your white paper, that type of stuff.
Yeah. So speaking of the white paper, we were talking about this earlier on. I saw that you were going to adjust. We were talking about this earlier on about the amount of supply that was going to be entering the market. You said you were going to
Yes.
adjust that on your white paper.
Yes.
Like,
Yes. Well, adjust the amount of time through which those tokens are vested. Yeah. Because at first, my first thought was, well, if we accelerate this vesting schedule, then we're accelerating to the point where the volatility will be less through a more volatile avenue. And then I talked to some folks in some friends of mine in finance who basically said, no, don't do that. And so I went, no, that's fair. Like, see, and that's the why you have those types of conversations is I need people around me to tell me, because I'm an ideas type of guy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I have an idea and then my brain just runs a mile a minute with it to like the most like absolute point.
Right.
And so I surround myself with people who go, hold on, like let's
Yep.
back a couple steps and let's talk about this reality. And I need that type of like grounding.
Hmm.
And that's why, and I know that about myself, which is why I surround myself with people who will go, hey, hold on, like,
Yeah.
let's talk about this for a second.
So like that's good. So you're gonna tweak the token distribution over time, so it's
Yeah,
more
yeah, yeah.
gradual
And
in this case.
it probably won't be the last edit of the white paper either,
Yeah.
because there's always, and then that's the nice thing about, you know, blockchain is that there's always something happening and there's
Yeah.
always changes.
So
So,
the
and
other
it's one of
question
the
I
things
had
that I love
was,
about it.
yeah. The other question I had was about there's like the founding team.
Yes,
Y'all have amount of tokens set aside. Are
correct.
those going to be like locked, or are they going to be earning rewards or anything like that while they're locked, or is that
They're
like a
going to be
hidden?
locked.
Okay.
Um, they're going to be locked for a period of time. Just
Okay.
because like I feel like the most important thing when you're building a blockchain project is integrity.
Hmm.
And so for me, what that means is people know who I am. They know what I'm about. They can talk to me if they want to. And they can talk to my team. And it's very, very important for me that things are transparent and that things are done right and that we build that trust with our base, because that's the, like if there were 10 commandments for crypto, the first commandment would be trust thy team. So
Yes.
if you don't trust the team of people you're investing with, don't invest with them.
Yep.
So the most important thing for me is integrity, it's trust, it's transparency. It's making sure that people know what's happening as it's happening, not after it's already happened.
Cool. Other question would be, so team is secured, your tokens are locked, but investors. So like I've been in a few DeFi products that I won't name where like team was good. They were shipping, constantly innovating. It was wonderful and nice. But like the unlocks came for the investors. And then it would be like really odd. The unlock would happen on the 15th. And by the 17th, the price would drop substantially because they'd just be
Mm-hmm.
dumping their tokens.
Right,
They're using basically everybody else's exit liquidity. So like
right.
how does that work with the investors? Was it like a one
So
year?
here's and mind you, like this is just kind of off the top. So for our development fund, I set up a structured selling type of situation in which at a certain volatility rate, the selling would have to stop. And I would definitely consider adding a quote unquote early investors to that pool. Like, okay,
Yeah.
you can sell these things after a certain time period. However,
Yeah.
should the volatility be too much, the selling stops. And obviously, the prerequisite of being above that market value would have to be there as well in order for that to
How do
start in the
you
first place.
how do you actually make that happen though?
Yeah. Because once they have the tokens, they have them. Yeah.
Right, right, exactly. I think that there's definitely a way to
You might be able to do
uh,
a smart contract, or you can probably
other.
like
Yeah, I
punish it
was
by
going to say either
deleting portions
via
of the thing that you
contract
send.
or either via contract or through other means. I just, for me, protecting retail investors is really important because retail in every layer of finance, retail always gets screwed.
Yeah.
And I've been that person. I've been retail. You know what I mean? So like, and so like, I feel like a lot of folks at a certain point, they detach themselves from that like sense of like, wow, like I could get screwed any second. And that was one of the reasons that we decided to go with the DAO format in the first place, is because these AAA gaming studios screw over their customer base all the time. And no one can do anything about it because you already bought the game. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we wanted to take a different approach with it, which is an approach where the retail investor is actively a part of it.
Which was wonderful. Like I read that in the white paper too, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds great." You know, like they're not trying to. You and your team don't seem to be actively trying to extract every ounce or penny of value out of like the players. It's like by the players for the players. I think is something along the lines of what I read in the white paper, and I was like,
Yeah,
"Thank you,
exactly.
thank you very much."
Yeah. Well, I'm looking to build a gaming studio that's for people who game. You know, like it that you know how it is. Y'all both played video games growing up, I imagine.
Oh yeah.
How frustrating is it, when you buy a game and then you're playing it and you have all of these ideas about how to make it better and no means to do that because the AAA gaming studios they've already bent you over and taken your money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And if you don't like it, well, you already bought it. So whatever. That's basically the attitude. And I just don't vibe with that. Like you would think that like the gamer's experience would be like of tantamount importance, because those are the people that are going to buy the next one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it just had become so far off base that I sat there and I'm looking at it and I'm like, this whole thing is kind of screwed up. Like they're going to take they're going to take your money and then they're going to charge you microtransactions too, just to kind of keep you on the hook.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, well, like, I feel like somebody has to stick up for those people and say like, hey man, like this game is yours. Like do with it what you will.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what we're going to do is we're going to send this, some years down the line, we're going to send this game out into the world and then it's going to form a life of its own.
I like that. And through the DAO and everything like that too, which is decentralized as well. Like, oh, that was my other last question. Like, obviously this thing seems like it's still kind of, I don't want to call it in its infancy, but it's still newish, right?
Yes.
So like right now,
you can call it in its infancy. That's true.
So like right now, like obviously now is not the time to be like, oh, well, we got the thing in existence. Bye. You want to kind of cultivate a culture of like, this is how the DAO should run. Like,
yeah.
How does that look like? Like, how do you get people to, how do you set that culture in place to where like, okay, this is how things should be, hopefully, right? And then if I happen to get hit by a car or whatever, everything doesn't fall down. So like you're not the key man risk, basically.
Right. I have like some contingencies in place, because that's a fact. You never know. I could walk out this door right now, have a heart attack, and die on my floor. That's the truth. But I don't intend on because Use Case Studios is under the umbrella of Use Case Future Technologies, and when that's the case, there's a lot that kind of goes on behind the scenes. And so I always built this project with the mindset that I may not be the person like quote unquote running the show forever. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to make this project DAO integrated in the first place, is because at a certain point I don't have to, right? Like it will essentially kind of it'll run on its own wheels, on its own merits. And that not only was that concept attractive to me, like as somebody who would potentially like invest in something like that, because the concept of the players having a substantial amount of control over what does or doesn't happen with not just the game, with the studio. So like if I said, hey, like we have two concepts for the next, like, let's say that this concept for the game works out incredibly and people are playing it like crazy and they're like, okay, what's next? So then you can say like, hey, like these are the two concepts that we're kind of mulling over. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
And then it's in their hands. Like I love the concept of these folks that have been playing the game, have been loving the game, being able to be a part of that next journey and being able to be a part of journeys in perpetuity. I love the concept of that. And it was one of the reasons that I was so like attracted to a DAO model. And I mean, it's also in a sense a trial run because I'm considering DAO integrating the parent as well.
Okay.
So because how interesting would that be to have an American corporation that's DAO integrated? Like it'd be incredible. Obviously, still a work in progress, not something that like I can like divulge much about. But yeah, I'm very much enthralled with the concept of decentralization, just as a concept.
And I think that is amazing. Like I'm loving everything that you said, man. So thank you.
I appreciate that.
I had a quick question because I want to deep dive a little bit back into like the actual game itself. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but like I want to talk about like the actual like I don't know if tokenomics is the right word, but actual economics of the in-game currency. So because like as you said, you have like you can make storefronts, like you can rent out your store. So
yes.
Is that going to be kind of like an in-game NFT marketplace, almost like OpenSea, but you can access it through the inside of the game or something? Is that kind of how it works?
Kind of, yeah. So we're kind of mulling over the concept of like theoretically speaking how that would work. Right. An in-game marketplace is one of the options that we're kind of discussing as, man, like it would be cool. In the same sense that like in order to vote on governance proposals, a player can go to the town hall.
Oh, that's funny.
And so, yeah, right. Isn't that fun?
I like that.
So we've considered something similar, but you know how like I'm trying to think of a good comparison. Like the bazaar in Aladdin, where it's just an open marketplace, tons of people selling wares, and that type of scenario. That's the kind of how I was envisioning how that would look and feel. Where like you're walking into this like bustling marketplace, there's people buying things, there's people selling things, there's people juggling, like that type of like going to a Renaissance fair, where you're almost like overstimulated by the like sheer amount of things happening in front of you at the same time.
Lanterns or something, colored banners. I have it in my mind somehow. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I know
see what I mean? Like it sounds interesting, like but the way that
like on a smart contract basis though, like what like the actual mechanics is going to be like, because you're sending actual tokens to each other, right? And so like that's going to be initiated by the actual game, and so like it's just interesting concept to think about, like what actually handles the movement of those tokens.
Well, we've considered the like I've been considering the possibility of like a custodial wallet that works specifically with Use Case Studios games, like all of them, in which you can like, because one of the problems that I like had kind of run into part of the way down that like conceptual path was, okay, like in-game currencies values theoretically would be different game to game, right? And so what would the conversion rate be? And so like that's something that we kind of ran into where I was like, okay, like so like game to game, if we made these tokens convertible into the various kinds of currency required for various games, then that would kind of solve for the issue that I was trying to avoid, was people playing the game that would make them the most money.
Oh, so you're saying you use
right?
the
And
same
then not
currency in several
playing,
games?
right?
Interesting.
Kind of. Um, there would be like a rate of conversion.
Right.
So like let's
But it
say
would be
like
a pegged
one,
rate. It would be like a specific rate, is what you're saying? Like
right?
a constant like 0.5 to like, and it wouldn't change. It wouldn't fluctuate.
Yes. I mean, well, at least in theory, that would be how that would. These days, stables have been kind of going through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
In fact, actually, something interesting to as a concept that I wanted to bring up is like even
yeah,
USDT. So like even those debt-based stable coins,
yeah,
even USDC and such, technically they're under collateralized because like they're
right,
collateralized with debt.
yeah,
So to me,
right,
that's not really collateralized, but whatever.
yeah. I mean, I hear you. You know, like I think that the funny thing about stable coins that I find so interesting is that folks are really worried about the fact that some of them are pegged or aren't they're backed by nothing, right? In
Yeah,
kind of,
right.
and people are very worried about that. But they're also perfectly willing to take out a piece of predominantly cotton that has Abraham Lincoln's face on it and say, "This is worth $5, please," and it's backed by nothing, and they have no problem with it. You know, so
I
I think
mean,
we're at a
I would say
stage
that like
where,
the backing of that is violence through taxes, which is pretty strong. You know what I mean? As far as backing goes. Um,
yeah, well, I mean, in terms of like monetary value, like
yeah,
for
yeah,
example,
literally. I mean, like, yeah,
the U.S. dollar used to be backed by gold, right? They were
yeah,
called gold backs,
even theoretically,
and
yeah, it was supposed to be.
and there was a reserve in the treasury of gold that was specifically there to back the U.S. dollar.
Right.
Whereas now we can just print as many of those things as we want, and then there you go. You know, then it is what it is. What is it like? 70 or 80% of the dollars that are in circulation today have been printed in the last 10 years.
Well, I mean, it probably worse. I think it's like in the last year or two. Like,
Yeah, isn't that
I think
crazy?
it was something like some crazy thing like that. Yeah, like they recently they've been pumping a lot of that new liquidity into the markets to save it
Yeah, they
for
really
sure.
have. If it was if the U.S. dollar was a cryptocurrency project, we would all be running for the hills.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because a lot of these tokenomics that I'm thinking about for cryptos, when I do take those crypto parallels and think about the real life, I'm like, oh wow, you're right. I would never buy that coin, right? Yeah, for sure.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Tons of coins with no utility, no anything that just like exist to exist. And
completely
that's not a knock.
centralized and whatever.
Yeah, and that's not a knock on, you know, Shiba Inu or whatever.
Well, that's
Like,
not even that centralized to me, is it? I'm not. I'm
I
not like a
mean,
Shiba buyer or a fan or anything. But like one thing I will say
yeah,
about it is that like I appreciate what they did with the original like the origin blocks, or if you can call it that. It's not its own blockchain, but like the original
right.
tokens with like the I don't think there's even a founder stash. Like they're just all out there. They were just sold cheaply and they just went
Yeah,
like that's kind of interesting.
it's an it's a weird thing. The
It's a
the
weird
the
little
whole like
experiment out there,
meme
but
the whole
like
like
yeah,
meme revolution thing that kind of happened. And of course, you expect that kind of stuff. We're in a space that's really new. People are trying to have fun. You know,
yeah,
like I get it. My sister owns Dogecoin. You know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's just it's a funny. It's and I can respect it for being a funny like little thing that they have going on there. And I can respect the grind. Those Shiba Inu folks have really been like trying to pump out some new stuff all the
They've
time.
made stuff. I've
Um,
I've got to admit, like I mean, like I'm still like it's a meme coin guys, but like they're developing a thing around it for sure, like a
And
whole
I mean,
ecosystem.
honestly, what else do you do at that point? You've memed yourself into a corner, right?
You really
Yeah,
have to just keep going, right?
you really do. You have to. You've made all these promises. You got to keep on going,
Like
and you
now,
got
I
to
think they're
keep
gonna
that
make
money
their own layer
flowing.
one blockchain. Yeah, like
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know.
crazy. Hey, you know what? More power to them. I'm one of those people. I don't decry competition in crypto. I think there's room for everyone. I think that the more things that are going on in the space, the better. I'm here for it. Like
Plus,
even
you
if
can
it
add
has,
those themes that, like, you can add those memes to your game, and it'll be even
yeah,
more.
people have discussed that with me. Um, and mind you, because of the game's like tongue-in-cheek nature, there will likely be some references to
Even hidden
cryptos and
Easter
other
eggs, even, you know.
projects.
Yeah.
Just little Easter eggs for fun, and that's something that's like very much like I want to build a game that crypto people will find funny,
Yeah,
like
it has that
if
personality
you look
behind it in
hard
that
enough.
case.
You
Yeah,
know,
it'll be like a
exactly.
familiar
Yeah.
space already.
Right. We'll throw like Craig Wright in there as like a snake oil salesman.
That's pretty good.
You know what
Exactly,
I
little
mean?
things
Like
like
that
that.
type of stuff where it's just like it's fun. We've mulled over, making Trump like this like country like type of guy who's like building a brick wall over near his house. You gotta build a wall. Like he's
Some
just
people might like that
God.
there for sure. I mean, yeah, yeah.
He's yeah, I think it's
Personally,
great.
I would try to shy away from anything political just because it's like you'd
Yeah, you don't want
probably
to
just
alienate anybody. It's just,
exactly.
a little tongue in cheek never hurt,
I
you
totally
know.
agree. I totally agree. There's a way to
I
do it. To like either
Yeah,
the way
as
that
long
I
as
would do
you
it is
do
like
it like as long as you do it in a way that's not like personal.
you got to offend both sides equally, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm not somebody that like shies away from like political conversation necessarily.
Totally.
Only because like, you're an adult. Like adults have to have conversations that sometimes aren't always easy. And if we were more like society, I mean, just like societally speaking, if we were more like eager and ready to have those conversations, we probably wouldn't be where we are now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the
People
same
just
reason
follow
that
a lot
like
of what
we
they
don't talk
hear. Yeah.
about politics, we don't talk about religion. Why? I don't see why not. Like those
Because it takes too
conversations are
long.
what. Yeah, right. It really does. But yeah, I want to see us like really embrace that sense of like irreverent fun.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And there's definitely ways to do it that would make sense or yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah. We there's a lot of characters, in the crypto space. There's a lot of really unique folks, and we want to highlight that in this like magical fantasy world as well.
Yeah. And I think that's a important concept because like I tell people once in a while, like even the 589 thing behind me, that's a meme in crypto, and it's like you should be aware of these memes before they show up in your face. Otherwise you become part of the meme on accident.
Right. Yeah, and that's true. It's and you know what? Like personally, I I don't mind being the joke sometimes.
Right.
Like you got to be able to make fun of yourself, and
Right. Especially going
and
forward
I'm
in the future,
sure that
you're
there
going to
will
make
be a
mistakes.
joke or two at my own expense in the game, and I'm excited for that to see what they come up with.
A little cameo or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, it'll be fun. I gave my okay for them to do whatever they wanted to do with it, so we'll see.
We'll see. You're excited to see what they're going to plan out
I
too.
am, yeah, I am. I'm excited to see what they could possibly come up with. I brought together a bunch of people that I know that are really funny, really witty, quick-witted people. So I'm
Hmm.
really excited to see, what they do with this world, because that's gonna be like one of the most important parts of it is
Yeah.
the world,
Well,
it being
what
immersed in
I'm
that
wondering
world.
is, I want to know about, okay, in old video games, old like classical ones, like right now, not okay. So like World of Warcraft right now, RuneScape right
Right,
now, Maple Story right now, like these things, these are MMORPGs with an in-game economy, and you can send
right,
gold between people or whatever. And technically, you're not supposed to like sell it between players because like then they would be liable for money laundering and all that kind of stuff. But like,
technically,
what I'm wondering is, in those games you can go to like an in-game shop where there's like an NPC, like an actual computer player
right,
character, and you can like buy or sell stuff between them. But what it does is like that's actually like a money sink in the game where it deletes the coin from existence. So like basically like players will like kill the monster, it like generates coins into existence, and then they take the coins and then they sell it to a shop or whatever or like they buy
right,
an item from the shop with those coins. And so it's this kind of constant flow, or like, are you going to be deleting cryptos in that way as you sell them to shops, or like will it just be like
So
forever inflating, or how does that work?
the way that we, or at least the way that I'm kind of envisioning it, and this is liable to change potentially, but it's crypto. This is all liable to change. But the way that I see it is that, and like the way like conceptually I wanted to set it up was that shops are run by NPCs until they're purchased, right?
Oh, wow.
So like
So then basically you would be
theoretically
generating the
speaking, the
revenue that they
more
would have?
people are engaging in digital property, the less NPCs are out there in the world selling whatever. So that's
You
basically
could like
the
go
way
there
that
and buy his store, basically, right? Is that what you're saying?
uh-huh,
Kind of like
right, or pay
conceptually or
rent.
something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like it's the way that I kind of want to see it executed is that, like, for example, let's say that you sell potions, right? That give you various buffs, and you went out into the world, you've got the supplies for it, you used a pestle and you mashed up a potion, or however potion making works. I don't know. I'm not a wizard, so I don't know.
Okay.
And it, let's say that you sell 50 of them, and you sell them each for like the equivalent of like $1. And let's say that your rent is like $20 for like a monthly cycle. So that like rent would be taken from those sales up until the point that you quote unquote make rent. Then the rest of it
Okay.
just goes right in your pocket.
Okay.
That's kind of the way that I'm envisioning how that would work as far as like a
Money
like a
seed.
rental property versus
Okay.
like ownership, where like you own that is yours. You know what I mean? And then from there, obviously, the startup cost would be more, but then you would like having a mortgage versus paying rent, right?
Yeah. You get to keep the whole percentage if you buy it, but it takes a little bit longer to actually get into profit. But once you do, you get to keep the whole thing.
Right,
And
exactly.
but then what that also does is that if someone actually just wants to get into the game and do that, they have to spend dollars to do that, which increases the value of the game itself, because you can probably just buy that currency either somewhere or whatever. So that's
Right,
good, because that,
right.
yeah, everyone will benefit in that whole instance.
Yeah, what I want to set up is I want to set up this economy which is self-regulating, in which folks can buy and sell essentially whatever they'd like as they please, and the land ownership is going to be a big part of that.
Yeah. Well, okay. Do you have any rules for players? Because like you know, like
Any
I'm guessing
rules?
it's going to be different than classical games, because now you can trade money between people, right? So it's like, I guess that rule is gone. There is in-game trading or out-of-game
Essentially
trading.
what we were trying to do was, you know how like you played World of Warcraft,
Back in the day, right? Right.
you know how people would essentially, there's this whole like black market for buying maxed out characters
Yeah.
and all of that type of stuff. We're essentially looking to like legitimize that practice that already exists in gaming and just
Could
make
your
it
character be a
a,
token? Is that what you're saying? Is that the way you
say
would
it
do it?
again.
Would your character be a token? Would it be tokenized? Or how would you transfer the ownership like that?
So everything in a sense will be tokenized.
Wow.
So like weapons, armor, spells, character models. I want for anything theoretically to be peer-to-peer tradable.
Okay.
Because like it's just such a cool concept. Like
Yeah.
of like, oh, like I've played this this build, this character model, whatever. I'm gonna sell it over to so and so, who, and then he's gonna use it, and then from there the character goes and lives a life of its own. Like does whatever it's gonna do. And mind you, that's like purely theoretical right now, as the mechanics haven't been built for that to work.
Yeah.
But I would love to see that concepts that we've seen in games already happen kind of behind the scenes brought to the forefront. So it's a feature, not a bug. You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah. I was gonna ask, will it be mounts?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, and I saw that you had asked,
I
and
was just
I
curious because
saw
like
that
travel, because like how big is the world gonna be? Like, will it be
uh,
teleportation? Will that be required at
pretty
all?
substantial.
Okay.
Um, I'll send once our conversation's over, I'll send you over some like beta documentation, and on
Sure.
that there's a map.
Okay,
So
cool.
we have the map drawn, and we have the areas drawn out, and they're all diverse socially and culturally in their own way, and
Is the lore written about
inspired
each place
by
already?
to some degree. Yes, there's going to be more
Okay.
lore written, like a lot more.
Right,
But
right.
we
But their
have
base interactions between each other are kind of laid already.
yeah, to a certain degree, that's
Okay.
true. Um, a lot of them are based on cultural areas of our own world. So
Okay.
you'll see a lot of influence from other areas involved in the areas in the game, as well as like every theoretical biome of like planet Earth is represented
Hmm. I
to
like that.
some degree or another.
There's even like an Antarctic little area where like ice
There's
magic or something.
there's a very snow heavy region, which when the map was drawn up, my art director when he did the initial drawing and sent it over to me. I was looking through it and I was like, this is awesome. Like, yeah, I'm here for it. Like, and I'll send it your way so that you can take a look too. Um,
Totally.
but yeah, no, super exciting. The map's pretty decently sized. It is, you're able to go out and do what you want. And I think that was the most important, probably one of the most important things for me was
Well,
giving the
can
players
you
freedom to do what they want to do.
well, what kind of things are those? Could you tell me about a little bit like the kind of skills that either are you planning to add or that exist already? Like, is there fishing at all, or is it mostly towards
Oh
combat
yeah.
or
So basically what we have right now conceptually is that players they're able to interact with one another, they're able to like form like guilds,
okay.
which I feel like guild play is an integral part of any fantasy game. You want to hang out with your friends and pair up, you can buy a property for it even, and set it up as you will. We've mulled over the concept of having certain areas within the game that people can actually build their own property, kind of like how like when you're building in something like a Gary's mod or that type of thing where you have kind of that like structural freedom. We've mulled over the concept of that, of having certain areas where you can essentially build things for yourself. But that's all theory right now. Obviously, like I would love to see something like that happen
Yeah.
at some point down the road.
It would be like a
Uh,
construction skill from RuneScape where you make your own house.
right, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, being able to like have that like freedom to build something really cool and people can come and see and go, whoa, like that's crazy.
Yeah. Little
Uh,
decorative areas or custom
right.
stuff.
And then the value of a place like that, who's to say?
Yeah. So would that be like there's like one main house portal and then like everyone accesses their house from the same kind of portal area? Or how would you access your house like that? Have you given that thought?
I mean, I think that the easiest workaround would probably be to have people like spawn in their homes or
Okay.
whatever property they happen to like be privy to. So
Yeah.
like there's tiers of like ownership. Like for example, um owning a campsite outside of town isn't the same as owning like a residential building. You know what I mean? So there's going to
Okay.
be
In terms
tiers
of
to it.
benefits or in terms of how?
And just in terms of like what you can like you can only do so much with a campsite, right? Versus
Right.
like having an actual building.
But could you
But
sell from
yeah,
a campsite? Could it be a shop? Could it still
yeah,
be a shop?
like yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I could definitely foresee something like that happening. Like having like a rug outside of your tent where you sit, like, you know, like, did you play Skyrim?
I have it. I don't know how much I've played there. It's been
Oh,
so long.
perfect. You know, like when you run into like a Khajiit, like outside of outside of a town, and they're like selling their wares or whatever, kind of like that.
Yeah. So like you could be one of those guys. That'd be kind of funny, right? Well, yeah. So
Right.
what would be nice about it though is that like once you set up your shop, you could probably just like leave the computer, right? And it would just automatically be able to sell stuff for you.
Yeah, I've mulled over the concept um of like employees,
Oh yeah.
or NPC employees. Like, let's say like you want to go out on an adventure, like you want to go and like fight a dragon or something, but you want your shop to run while you're gone. You
Or what
have
if you're
an
just
NPC.
offline is what I'm saying. Like what if you're at
Oh,
work and
right,
then
right, right. Yeah, I feel like it's safe to assume that shops would run 24/7 regardless of whether or not the player's present,
okay.
because that would just make the most sense.
Yeah, that's how, video game shops, but real life's not like that
Right,
all the time because, so like I
right.
was just wondering how much you wanted to like bring over and yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like the concept of only being able to sell when you're in game would be cool until you're actually
It'd
doing
be
it, where
really
you're like,
lifelike. Yeah.
right, right. Where, except like when you're like, man, I wish people would buy my stuff when I'm not here,
Mm-hmm. But
and
then,
then
like you were saying, you could pay the NPCs, and that's kind of just like what that would do is kind of like reward people who play more because otherwise they'd have to spend more of their in-game currency to not play as much. So it's kind of an
right,
interesting way to do it, right? I
right.
just conceptually, but
Like
yeah.
let's say like for example, like an NPC shopkeep costs you like an amount of money. Like, oh, it's like a one-time purchase. You take it out of your earnings or whatever, and then whenever you leave, now there's a guy whose whole job is to stand up and man the counter, and that's his whole thing.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
that'd be nice because then you can own many shops, that'd be kind of cool.
right, exactly. Monopolized a little bit.
Right. That would actually be interesting though, if you think about it. I could imagine in the future if this actually gets big, like companies would start coming in and buying up spots
That's
and
that's
like
exactly the
start
plan. Yeah. I'll hit up Snoop Dogg, ask him if he wants to put up a smoke shop in town.
literally though. Yeah, because he was on Cardano or something recently, isn't that he did the
Yeah,
NFT?
Snoop's been getting in it, man. I can respect it. Honestly, like, he's living the life. But yeah,
Did he sell NFTs that were? Is that what he did? He just sold
I
NFTs.
think
I
so.
remember
I
that,
think
but
he
I
just
wasn't
put
really
out
paying
like a
attention.
collection or something. I also
Huh.
heard that he bought Death Row Records to make it an NFT based music company. And
Huh.
man, I respect that move.
That's
Like,
cool.
that's amazing. Like,
I've seen a
it's
lot of
it's
NFT
innovative.
based music stuff recently, but
Yeah.
what I saw in it was that it was giving so much revenue to the creators. I was like, no, like when are companies actually going to give their money away to use this stuff, man? But then like, I guess
Right.
like creators like actual Snoop Dogg are being like, yes, I'm doing this, so that
He's like,
makes sense.
I own this. Like, this is mine. So what are you gonna do about it? And like,
Yeah.
nobody's gonna mess with Snoop.
Yeah,
Like,
no one does at all. No one
he's
messes
an
with him at all.
icon. He lives his best life. That's it. Like, I can respect that. But
Very
yeah,
famous guy,
I would
honestly,
love
right
to
now.
see that type of I would love to see that type of engagement where we have companies, where we have people of stature, where I would love to see like live musical performances in like the like town square. Like, I
Yeah.
would love to see that type of stuff happen.
Huh.
And really anything is theoretically possible in that kind of world. So I won't leave any stone unturned. I won't leave anything to the imagination. Like, I want to see the potential of something of that magnitude fulfilled.
Yeah. Well, do you know what a guild bank is?
A guild bank.
Yeah. It's like a shared
I
bank between your guild. Would you be
Right,
able to do
right. I
something like
mean,
that
yeah,
where it's
that
like a separate
conceptually
wallet?
that makes sense. Right. Oh,
Would that be a possibility?
honestly, I hadn't even considered that. But yeah, I don't see why not. Almost like a mini treasury. That's
And it would
really
be locked by the
interesting.
people who are in that guild.
Right,
Yeah,
and
or-
it would
yeah.
require a certain amount of votes in the affirmative to release funds for various things.
Or
I can
probably not
totally see
even.
that.
So depending on the way that I've seen in the past is like a guild can have different rankings in the guild because it's like maybe there's new members to the guild or whatever, and you have
Right.
to be a certain rank in order to take money out or to take anything out of the bank.
Oh, that's smart.
But at that point, you can just take however much out of it.
Okay, that's
Right.
interesting. You really have to trust your guild mates, huh?
That's why they're your guilds. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Otherwise, you just don't form a guild with them. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I think that's super interesting. Plus, the with everything being online, your guild could be all over the place.
All over the place. Different time
I
zones,
love
different
that.
everything.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting concept. I'll have to pass that along. It wasn't something that I had like thought about too extensively.
Totally.
So like, yeah, no, that's really interesting. The
Yeah,
concept of a
definitely.
guild bank.
And it's funny because like World of Warcraft is the only one that I know that does that.
Right,
Like
right,
RuneScape
yeah.
doesn't.
We draw some like definitely draw some inspiration from World of Warcraft because like how could you not?
How could you not?
It's
Yeah, you're
this
gonna
like
do it on
gargantuan
accident. Yeah.
franchise. Well, we're actually planning on poking a little bit of fun at
Oh yeah.
World of Warcraft. One of the commercials that we're considering running is play our game to pay for your World of Warcraft subscription.
That's pretty funny.
Uh,
That's pretty funny.
yeah, it's like I said, you have to pay respect to those who came before you,
Yeah.
and the way that we plan to do that is just a little lighthearted prodding, just a little joke at another company's expense.
That's a good angle to go at, though. I mean, that's it's pretty
It frames it in a
straightforward.
way that's simple to understand. Like, oh, I can theoretically make money doing this, which is true. Uh, yeah, you love to see it. The continued development of blockchain and gaming kind of like intertwining like that. I'm very excited to see what the future holds once some of these AAA gaming studios kind of fully jump on board.
Yeah, you know what I've always wanted? Like, I feel like a lot of companies would benefit from this NFT space in ways that they're not really thinking of. Like
100%.
you can take a cut of a transaction every time an NFT is traded, and then you can make that main marketplace for people to trade them. And so, like for
Right.
example, like if you're playing Pokemon Go, every one of your Pokemon should be an NFT,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Like how could it not
absolutely.
be? Or like I was thinking,
Absolutely.
like I was playing Maple Story a couple years ago, and I played to the point where like my items were pretty decent. And I calculated it out because it's like I went to the black market sites where you could like I didn't buy the gold, but I wanted to see the exchange rate of the gold, because like you can
Right.
there's technically sites out
Right.
there
You
where you can
didn't
buy the
buy
gold.
any gold.
I really didn't. I've bought RuneScape gold before way back in the day. But I didn't buy any. I like honestly, you can buy Maple Story gold from the game itself. It's really just not even like, and it's at a better
Right.
rate anyways. So like I really didn't. But I was curious about the exchange rate because it goes anywhere between like 20 cents or like 80 cents per billion or
Right.
something, right? And my problem was I have a lot of value basically in my items, but they're
Right.
illiquid. So like basically, so like think about this, right? My items probably together are worth like $4,000.
Mm.
Okay. But in order for me to like get the actual dollarage out of it, I would have to like first take the item, put it in the exchange, get the in-game gold for it, and then have like collect this large sum of in-game gold, and then just like take that to a black market site and sell it and get the money for it.
Right.
And by then there's a lot of like fluctuations, and then like it's not even allowed, and like it's probably doable, but I was always
There's a
just
lot of
thinking
red
like I wish
tape
I could just
involved.
like take this item and send it to someone for $1,000.
Right. Well, that's exactly the concept that brought me to this project in the first place, was that like I wanted to see what would happen if you made like this like comedic fantasy like Dungeons and Dragons type of game, but you can trade literally everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
My brother plays Dungeons and Dragons too, so it's like
yeah, it's a great game. If you've never played, I highly recommend it. Very, very
I
fun.
played it with him once. And so the funny thing is, when I played it with them, it seemed like such an open-ended game that it's not even
It
one
is.
game. Does that make sense? It's like everyone brings their
Yeah,
own version of the game.
there's infinite possibilities in Dungeons and Dragons, like, and that was something that like that was a concept that I kind of grasped onto as well, is that like you want to build a world where someone can do anything.
Does that mean
you
it'll
know
be procedurally generated in a way so that like, or like how do you get that kind of like infinite expanse in a finite area, like for all these kind of like different quest lines or stories
Yeah,
or
I've toyed with the concept of like procedurally generated like servers. So
okay.
like if you're like inter-server traveling, each server would theoretically be different. Like I don't know, maybe like the world is kind of shifted in a sense that like place certain like key areas are in different spots, or and it just kind of changes the whole overlay of the world. But I would love to see us kind of really lean into that type of like unique experience, because you would love to see it. You'd love to see each player having this like unique vision of the world in which they're inhabiting.
Yeah. Well, even in
So
terms of
yeah,
like a quest line, it would be interesting if you could like, because in Dungeons and Dragons, it's always like, do you do this or do you do this?
right.
Right. And it'd be interesting to see that like that means that like you would have to write like every one of those things into the game almost, you know?
Right. That like set that like and that's the difference between like playing like a tabletop game versus like actually playing a video game, is that
Right.
everything has to be, you know, you can't, it's not off the cuff, it's planned to a certain degree. With Dungeons and Dragons, for example, anything's possible. I've played a game where my dungeon master didn't appreciate something my character had chosen to do, so he had me killed by a leviathan, and that type of stuff doesn't. And maybe that particular scenario may happen in game, just as like a tongue-in-cheek reference. But yeah, that type of stuff is possible in like a tabletop game that's not as possible in like a digital product. So that's
Right.
something that we're going to have to like really mull over and talk with the development team and see like what's possible, what's not possible.
Right.
So that'll be an interesting set of conversations for those developers when I sit down
For
with them
sure.
and say, hey, this is the stuff that I want to do, and I'll hold my breath and see if they say yes or no.
Yeah. A lot of that might take some like real AI or something if you want to do like
Oh
all
yeah.
the
Oh yeah.
combinations or something.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, what I'm
absolutely.
wondering is, so this is a blockchain based game, but that means that like the static layer is blockchain. But that means that like, isn't there like a centralized server or like do you have a data center or something, or like, because something has to be running the actual game, right?
Right. Yeah. To my understanding, that's accurate.
Right. So is that something that like the company would be paying for, or like would the tokenomics of the token be able to like and eventually generate revenue to keep that sustainable, or like how would these?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that like it's that's definitely one of those things that I could see being funded by our treasury.
Right.
Once that's kind of like inflated to the degree where it's usable. Like within the tokenomics of the project, I set a development fund in place,
Right.
which will assist us with the development of the game, as well as as well as the treasury, which will be designed to also, in its own way, um, assist theoretically in that development. My I have this because, like I said, like I don't come from a background of like running servers, and how that will theoretically work for a game of this scale is something that I'm going to have to consult with the development team about, and make sure that we're, just from a security standpoint, that we're able to maintain the player experience, because that's the most
Yeah.
important.
Well, would you consider going cross-chain, or are you going to stick with Polygon?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I would absolutely consider a like like cross-chain solution. There's a lot of really amazing projects that I would love to work with. I would love to do something. I would love to do something with Polkadot. I would love to do something with like Cosmos, and a lot of these like really like interoperable, like quick blockchain projects. But that's way down the road, obviously, you know, like, but yeah, I've definitely considered a cross-chain solution.
Kind of just waiting for their actual functionality to happen, though, because like in reality, like you're on the most stable blockchain right now. Like, let's be real, you know.
Yes. And I'm a big fan of Ethereum in general. Because how could you not be? It's this massive accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I think there's a lot of corruption behind it that actually forced it to be that way. That's why it's so successful.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it actually is a smart contracts platform, and like, there's not really another one out there.
Right. It's the project that I think for a long time a statistical majority of people will likely build on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The first mover effect, and that's where the most of the knowledge is from the developers in the first place. Like, if there's a crypto developer and he knows how to develop crypto, chances are he knows some Solidity. And
exactly,
you know, for sure.
Exactly.
And plus,
it's a nice
a lot of the newer
point.
ones. Yeah, it's a starting point, which means a lot of the newer blockchains will accept Solidity in the first place. I've seen that before.
Right.
So like, this could be easily ported over, which would be kind of nice. The one thing about going cross-chain though is that some chains will support like NFTs, but then they won't support the contract itself. So you still have to use the Ethereum virtual machine. So in which case it's like, what are you really doing?
Right. At that point,
but it can still be helpful. But if you're already using a layer 2 scaling solution like Polygon or Matic or whatever you want to call it nowadays, it's not even going to be that big. It won't be that big of a difference. But I guess it can be, because especially if you start using like flared networks or something, that would be an interesting one to look at. But it's not even out yet.
Yeah, that's true.
Like IOTA would probably be another one. But is also being developed right now. They're making the Shimmer network and stuff like that.
IOTA is super interesting, man.
Like, IOTA is really one of my favorite old school
project. Ones. Really low key.
Yeah, well, it was really hyped up back a couple of cycles ago. But that's when I got into it. But like, I think that there's so much. It's such a future project, man. Like, it's not even close. You know, they keep saying soon. Soon is now a meme. They made the soon-iverse, you know. Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, that's the whole crypto space in a nutshell. It's just, you look at someone and you say, talk to me in 10 years. Like, either I'm a genius or an idiot. I'm not sure which. We'll find out.
Well, that is the nature of exponential growth, though, is that like people tend to overestimate how much will happen in 2 years, but then they underestimate how much will happen in like 8 years, because basically like they're expecting it to go up like a straight line, but it goes up slowly at first and then it goes boom at the end, you know. And so like, they're being like, it's so slow, it's lame, and then suddenly it's like everything, you know?
And they're like, who could have seen this coming?
But
I
mean, it's also difficult because in the meantime it doesn't go straight up and everything wobbles around, and you have to deal with the volatility.
Everything's really cyclical, man. Like, I'm and I'm sure you are too. I'm the crypto friend. So when people want to talk about digital assets, they talk to me. When Bitcoin crashes 10%, they're like, what's happening? And I'm like, it's fine.
They do. And they text you and you're like, it's okay. It does that.
And they're like, whoa, like, I just bought this yesterday and now it's down. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to crypto, man. Like, you should probably buy some more, I imagine. But yeah, you know, like, people, the more that will come to understand digital assets societally, the easier this like transition will be. Because right now we're in a transition, and it's a resistant transition, in that there's a lot of folks that are like, digital assets, scams.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the funny thing is, the way I was telling it to like Eric the other time, because he was like, oh yeah, the regulations and stuff. And I was like, yeah, but like what happens is we're the ones, we're the ones who figure out that this stuff is fun, important, profitable, useful, etc. And then other people come in and be like, oh, I'm gonna buy that, or like make my own version of it or whatever, you know. And
you know, a lot of folks are really worried about regulatory bodies in crypto. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm on, because here's the thing: is like not all regulation is bad.
No, I mean, in reality, you want it to happen so that the big players can actually come in, you know? But the
Absolutely,
way that they're doing it, I
absolutely.
feel like
It'll
they're just
make people
attacking the
feel
projects
safe.
and
It'll
picking
make them
winners.
feel cozy. Regulations are like a weighted blanket, and right now we don't have a blanket at all. So, like the concept of a blanket in general sounds nice, and that's what regulations are in my mind. It's a nice, comfortable weighted blanket
Hmm.
if it's done right. If
Yeah.
it's
If they would
crypto
actually
can
go after the
either
scams.
be built to flourish, or it can be strangled by unnecessary regulatory bodies.
They're
So if done the
strangling
right,
competition, which ends
right,
so they're strangling competition, which ends up being so the competitive blockchains are basically like the high quality blockchains, and that's the ones that they're
yeah,
regulating against instead of regulating away the scams, because the scams are going to fall apart anyways,
right.
and they're not even a
Well, the
threat to the people who
scams
are
are
actually trying
where
to
they
regulate them.
the scams are where they make their money, but it's just very hush hush about it.
Yeah, yeah, in a way,
Uh,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, like, and that's the thing is, I think some folks are resistant to regulation to a certain degree because they are acting in bad faith, and they don't want that gravy train to shut down. And I
Yeah.
get that. Like they want to make money, and I mean, don't we all? Like, but at the end of the day, like there's some sacrifices that need to be made in order for a tree to continue to grow. You know,
What
so
kinds of things, how do you think it'll affect um either the blockchain space in general or your game specifically? Like what kind of regulatory effects do you think you could see happening or changes at all?
what I always tell Rudy is that it's not really a matter of like if we run into some regulatory body down the line. It's a win type situation.
Okay.
Like because in the space that we work in, the SEC is going to do what they do, right?
Once you get big enough, they'll find you, basically, is what I've
Yeah,
seen.
absolutely. And you know what? They'll know where I'm at. that's
Yeah,
that's just how I
yeah,
feel about it. That's what
yeah.
that's why you have a good legal team, and that's why you make sure that you do everything transparently and everything's done properly, so that you can, when you eventually do come to that situation, because I do think eventually, given the size of the company that I'm anticipating that we're building here, I do anticipate obviously having those types of interactions.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
wish you luck on that, man. They're mean.
yeah,
They're dude,
yeah, I appreciate
what
that.
I've noticed
Like
is they don't care. They don't care about actually helping people or protecting investors. They literally just try to shut down companies. And like
right,
I'm trying to be very vocal on Twitter and I'm part of like John Deaton's lawsuit thing, and like I'm trying to be like I'm helping. I don't know if you've seen that even the library token is like having troubles with the SEC now. And originally
oh
the library
really,
token, yeah. So originally they were trying to be really compliant with the SEC. There was like answer like they're like giving them all the emails and all the stuff they're asking for.
right,
And then the SEC is just like, nah, there's nothing you can do. You're gonna have to just shut everything down. And then eventually library is just like,
and they're
I
like, well, see you
can't
in
deal with you
court
guys
then,
anymore.
like,
Like they're being much more publicly mad about it, which is good. Like I think
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, they're a body that's designed to protect certain interests, and that's what their goal is. You know,
They're
um,
owned. They're a rogue regulatory agency at this point, completely owned by, in my opinion.
yeah,
But we'll see how that plays out.
we'll see. I'm basically, the way that I see it is, when the SEC comes knocking, because they will at some point. It's statistically very likely, especially given what it is that we're working on. Then
Are
again,
you seeing the Ripple case? Are
yeah,
you following that?
yeah, yeah.
Do you think that'll have anything like effect wise on your company or anything?
Well,
Or this coin?
yes, it'll affect every crypto company. I would be silly to think that I would somehow be exempt in that. I think it'll set a precedent, and
But that's my hope. That's my
in
hope. But
America,
like I also worry that it could just be the only coin with clarity, and then everyone else is just confused still. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I mean, here's my thing: is that when Ripple does win their case, because and I say win because I
I
feel
assume
pretty
that too.
strongly.
I've been,
I feel
yeah, I
pretty
assume. I've been
strongly that they'll win their
watching it.
case, and I've never invested in. I've never invested in them. Never put a penny into it. Just because it wasn't really for me.
There's other stuff you like for sure.
Right, exactly. And there's plenty of room to go out there and run. But
Yeah.
when I saw that that was happening, my first reaction was, this is a huge problem for crypto in general.
Yeah.
Just because, like, you know, to see companies out there, you know, just being attacked seemingly at random, it just set a bad precedent for me. And it was one of the reasons that I am dedicated to staying US based as a blockchain company.
Interesting. Okay.
Because if we're not careful, America will fall behind.
Literally.
Way behind.
And this is important tech. So yeah.
And I don't want to be, I'm hoping that in my own way, I set a precedent for some of these larger companies that start here in the US that we can stick around, because I can't be the only person holding this building up. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, and I agree. A lot of them have left. A lot of the major
and I mean, I
left.
get it. Don't get me wrong. Is it easier to start in Germany, in Portugal,
Singapore, or something?
Yes, yes, of course it is. And will we have bases of operations out of those areas eventually? Yeah, probably. Like, why not? But we are based, when we'll continue to be based here in the US. And the reason for that is very intentional. You know, like, I want for there to be innovation coming out of the US, because a lot of times we stifle innovation because we're worried about what that innovation could bring.
Yeah.
You know, we live in a society in the US it's not the most privy to progress, at least not right away.
You know what I keep thinking of? I keep thinking of the fact that you can that you're adding the ability to rent or like to own the shops. Because you know what I keep thinking of is, like, I keep thinking of, like, way back in the day, you go to like a RuneScape general store and you go there and you buy your little pot of flour and you spend your 3 gold pieces or whatever. But I just imagine in my mind, I'm like some person could be constantly receiving that income. That is so valuable. Like,
right?
Like, so, like, people are gonna be paying so much money. Like, it makes me want to just go there and be like, I'm just gonna buy this land on the cheap and hold it for 20 years in case it exists, because it's like, because if it actually gets used like that, like, I don't know, man, like the amount of passive income of that is actually
substantial.
Really,
even if you bought property to rent it to other people. You know, like,
but getting in early is what I'm saying. Like, I feel like this kind of stuff, like, imagine right now, like suddenly the general stores in RuneScape went for sale, like, and people could go, they'd be so expensive, they'd be like, completely unobtainable.
Right.
That's how I see this stuff going. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And I'm very, like, enamored with the concept of virtual property as, like, a vehicle for digital ownership. It's just, the concept is so interesting. You can do so much. The game
has to be good enough. That's the thing. You know what I mean? It has to drive the people there so that they care about the property.
And that's why I want us to be unilaterally focused on bringing a good product, bringing a good game first.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, people are trying to have fun.
Yeah. And I like the art style. So one more thing, is it 2D or 3D, top down? Or how do you see that kind of?
It's going to be, the models are going to be 3D. Okay. So it's going to be a 3D world.
Third person, first person?
Third person.
Okay. So a la World of Warcraft kind of style.
Kind of, yeah. Like, I don't know as the specifics as far as, like, how far, like, zoomed out, like, a camera might be. I don't have an answer for quite yet, because I haven't, like,
what about
conceptually seen it.
Do you click to move, or do you arrow key? Is that developed?
I would operate under the assumption that you would move like a traditional type of, like, computer game. You know how you've got your
ASWD,
your movement keys.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. That's the assumption that I would operate under. Unless we somehow come up with a different system, but I don't think we're trying to reinvent the wheel here. Like
Yeah, yeah.
when it comes to movement.
Well, I don't think I have any more questions. This has been super enlightening and very interesting, and
Yeah,
you've been so
super fun,
transparent. It's
man.
been really awesome. Do you have anything else
Yeah.
that you'd like to ask me or tell me or anything at all?
No, you guys conducted a great interview. Like I really appreciated you guys bringing me on. Like super fun. I would love to
Yeah,
come back and we can
definitely.
talk more. About the space in general.
Yeah. I want to keep up with this
I've got
project. I want to see how it develops. I want to see like
yeah. And it's not
screenshots or something,
it's not the only thing we're working on either. So
Cool.
I'm happy to come back and talk about like our decentralized virtual therapy program that we're working on.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm happy to I'm mulling over the concept of use case campus right now, which is going to be a Web3 like learning program to like educate people about Web3 concepts.
Okay.
So like there's a lot
Via
there's a lot
video
going
or
on.
how so?
Say again.
Are you thinking through video or what medium?
Yeah, among other mediums. Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I think, and this is way down the road, mind you, I would love to build a physical campus through which people can transact with the campus's token to purchase things like necessary like textbooks, which of course would be digital, and transact that way using like a unilateral like use case wallet.
Cool.
That type of stuff where like that like pie in the sky. It's pie in the sky for now until it's not. But yeah, I'm very much a futurist in that like I love the concept of like functional blockchain cities. I like there's so much within that space that there is to flesh out and discuss that, I'd love to come back and we'll talk more.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate your time a lot, and I've learned a lot. I'm going to definitely keep up with this, and I can't wait to hear more.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Really
time.
Nice talking to you, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Have a great day.
You too, man. Have a good one.